Okay, we're gonna call the meeting for the 1st of November for the St. Albans Town Selectboard to order. Please start, join us in the Pledge of Allegiance here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have to amend the agenda to add the municipal planning grant for bylaw modernization under the town manager's report, which is agenda item 5. So this will be the new 5E.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Any other agenda corrections, Carrie, or additions?
I don't believe so at this time, no.
Okay, perfect. So we're on to agenda item number 2, the warrants. Jonathan, you have the general fund?
I have the general fund warrants dated 10/28/2021. Fairly large amount, $106,999.06. One of the big portions of that for $64,500 was the camp precast, which I believe was the box culvert on Church Road and whatever associated with it. Pretty much sums that up. I have just a couple little things I want to point out on here. Where did I see it? The paving one for Pike for $20,000. Pike Industries for paving. I take it, where is that? Okay, maybe I stand corrected.
So your question is, what was the paving, what paving was done?
Yeah,
Or what?
I thought I saw paving on here, but,
There was, but it wasn't Pike, it was,
Hungerford Construction.
Town hall?
So that's for the new town hall,
it is.
okay. So we're paying for that out of the general fund already.
Yeah, as we previously discussed, we were gonna do that because we get a rate that's half of what the commercial rate is if we have the subs do it.
I realize that, but
Oh.
I understand that part of it,
Okay.
but this project was supposed to be funded with LOT dollars. So why is it, why can't we fund it with LOT dollars if we're this far ahead in the project? We're at the beginning phases of it, why are we already hitting the general fund? We're not at the end, we don't know where we're gonna be, I don't think.
So as was previously discussed at a number of meetings, we did this on our garage project to save taxpayer money. We just did it out of the LOT money. We did not charge the LOT funds for that. We discussed this at least at 2 other select board meetings. There was no objections from the board at that time to pay for the paving out of those other lines, out of the general fund line. We had the same discussion when we talked about the dirt for a while.
Right, I realize that.
Yeah, so is the question different then, because?
No, the question isn't different, I'm just saying, like, when we put it on the ballot that we're gonna spend LOT dollars for this project, and we're months into the project, and we're using general fund dollars, that's my issue with it, Carrie.
Mhm.
And you've known that from all the other previous discussions, but the discussion just ends, that's all. Which it can tonight too, I'm fine with it. I just wanna point it out that when we put on the ballot to say use LOT dollars, I think we need to, as a board, we should make sure that we use LOT dollars. Especially we don't even know if the job's over. There might be plenty of money in there. So unless we're gonna go back after and, refund the general fund out of the LOT, then that's fine. But to do it this far ahead of the game, unless there's a project outlook that says, we are gonna be a little over on it.
There is a project outlook that says that we are very, very close and we're eating a little bit into our contingencies to the point where we haven't even put out a furniture bid yet because we're not sure if we're gonna have enough money for it. Because of the soil issues that were brought up, where we were $250,000 to $300,000 over on that certain line because we didn't know exactly what we were gonna get, and we got something that wasn't great. So we had to pay for that with that aero aggregate that we talked about for about 3 months. So the budget's very, very tight. And we had the analysis at the subcommittee level, and with Hunter, our project manager and cost estimator, as to whether or not we would even have the project move forward, or should we push it till next year. We brought that to the select board with Hunter here. It was determined that we should push forward anyway, because next year's cost could escalate beyond even what we experienced this year. I guess I'm just a little concerned, because you and I saw each other today, and I was not asked at that time about the question, so I could prepare for it.
I honestly didn't pick up on it until later today.
But, I mean, once we decide as a board, I guess I thought that meant it was resolved for the moment, but if it's gonna be brought up once a month, I guess I would like to know about it in advance, that's all.
I think we left it right there, that, some way to mark that or keep track of it,
Yep.
to see where it ends up.
Absolutely,
So which paving is that? Is that around specifically?
that's the base in the parking lot.
Okay.
We'll be doing a top coat next year,
Yep.
Okay.
so,
I mean, cause if you look, the paving line's already over,
well, we brought in how
year.
much in revenue to offset the overdue, though? How
I
much,
guess.
how many AOT dollars did you bring in, Alan, this year so far for
They
paving?
just sent a check for $126,000 and something, so
Alright, so, I mean,
if you look at the revenue side, we'll be okay.
yeah, I'm looking at intergovernmental. Miscellaneous. We can do that and get an accurate number on where we are with the paving line. I mean, so you got a DPW AOT paving grant, you just got a check for $125,635. And this report has your, that's an important point. Jonathan just brought up, so I wanna look. So Department of Public Works has paving at $517,606. I think that includes this warrant. And if not, what was that warrant amount for the paving?
20,000 something.
So it'd be like 37, call it 38 grand we'd be over roughly, and we have a revenue booked against that of 125. Do we have any more paving expenses coming to us this fiscal year, you think?
Shouldn't, I don't expect any, no.
Maybe the town hall top coat in the spring?
Well, they don't usually start paving before June, June's early, so, you know, we try to negotiate that they don't charge us the same year if we're over.
Well, I'm just saying, are we really over if you got, you know,
We're not really over at all. no.
540 on the books with a
True.
revenue of 125 to, but
You're right,
I
yeah.
get what you're saying. We went through the same issue with the public works garage. The general fund spent money to pave that facility, and it was, Carrie alluded to the point that, contractors, if you work paving in your general contracting, you know, your contract, so to speak, like a DEW will hire Hungerford Paving and charge you probably 10% more
Full price.
in most cases. Whereas when we, the town, buy the tonnage from Pike Industries, we get it for like when it's spread by Pike, it's like 65 a ton laid, which is ridiculously cheap. And the thought with the ballot article, whether or not it's legal to do this, is the excavator that was used on the site to put the parking lot in, the drainage, the catch basins, the pipe, the stone base was all paid for with LOT dollars, or will be. And the way that you kind of not skirt that question is you say this is a choice. You know, we could have a stone parking lot if we so chose, but we're making the choice given that we have, you know, 6 figures left in the paving budget when you factor our AOT revenue from that highway grant to one, lessen the burden of all these cost increases that are putting pressure on the town hall budget, and to, you know, pave the parking lot for a lot cheaper than we would have paid if DEW had contracted the service out for us. So I get your point. Do you foresee any other expenses related to the construction of the town hall coming from the general fund, or is it gonna be like DPW, the new DPW facility where we're limited to paving?
Right now, our plan is only only paving. But I mean, you know, if we wanna pay Hunter or someone else more money to track these things, we can start tracking all the money we're saving when we buy topsoil next year, and,
No, I'm,
you know, I
I'm
mean,
just,
but
I'm
that's
wondering if you're envisioning another expense, like, is it worth tracking anything else that could have?
Well, it'll still be in the budget, we're gonna talk about this budget at our next meeting, I don't anticipate any, but, Hunter can show you where we're gonna be tracking things like that.
Okay, so let's bring it back up again on the 18th and see.
15th,
15th, sorry, I don't know why. Did we meet last?
we did
October was
last
the
month on
18th?
the 18th, yep.
Okay, so that's like the 5th time I've said 18th today when I meant 15th. So we had extra money in the general fund, saved quite a bit of money on the work by, you know, but I get it, we could have bought the same work as the town and paid for it out of the infrastructure reserve. So it's a question, if there are reserve dollars left over from this project, if we spend, you know, $25,000 less than what we allocated for that 4.5 million, we could elect to reimburse the general fund for that expense. But I still think that, you know, if we max the project budget out and we've paid for the paving out of the general fund, then the answer would be the same as the DPW, that, you know, we paid for it, we had extra money on the paving line, we made the choice. If we had to leave the town hall project alone, we would have ended up with a stone parking lot. We made the choice to upgrade it with existing, you know, tax dollars. It's not like we're proposing in a budget meeting to raise taxes. Actually, we cut the paving line by $25,000 at the last budget meeting for next fiscal year. So we're holding true to our promise that we're not raising taxes to pay for this project. But I get what you're saying. And did anybody else have anything to add before we entertain approving this warrant? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve that warrant?
I'll make a motion, we approve the warrant dated 10/28/2021, the amount of $106,999.06.
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
Good. Okay. Any nay?
Yep.
Okay, so it's a 3-1, Jen. Okay, Aaron's got payroll warrants.
Okay. So we have two payroll warrants here, one dated for October 22nd, 2021 in the amount of $21,522.81. The other dated October 29th, 2021 in the amount of $40,330.47. And I think that one, and I tried to find this, but I think that one's related to committees and like the planning commission that met, but I couldn't quite trace that out. I don't know if Anna's on the line, if she could just.
I am.
Yep.
It's retirement. I had to do the month-end report and send a check to Beamers.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll make a motion that we approve these two payroll warrants for the dates said and the amounts.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I've got three different cost account warrants. We're gonna start with the infrastructure development fund. It's in the amount of $28,853.58. It's all related to the town hall. The largest two invoices are to Freeman French Freeman and Sanborn and Head. So that's our architect and our geotech people. So those two combined are almost 25 of the 29,000 that we're looking at here. We've got some surveying and then Peterson Consulting for their ongoing management. So it's no infrastructure development warrant dated November 1st, 2021, and the amount of $28,853.58. Make a motion to approve?
One quick question on the button professional surveying. Do you know what they actually surveyed over there, first thing out?
Yeah, the elevations, because it was before we were trying to cut down on what we needed
On the
for
fill
your
amount.
aggregate.
Oh, it was a cut
Yeah.
and fill analysis or something like that? No, we're
I don't know if it was called that, you're probably right, but I just know it was basically what does the plan versus actuals actually
Elevations.
look like.
Yeah. So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we've got a stormwater utility warrant. It's for watershed consulting. It's for an existing condition survey and a dry weather outfall survey. Yeah, so we have a warrant in front of us dated November 1st, 2021, in the amount of $10,196. It's the one invoice for the 2 surveys that we mentioned. So we take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we have a stone house warrant. It's $6,025, and it's all related to boring the new water line to the stone house from the looks of it. It's $5,900 to Ryan Jordan for boring, and then we have a $125 invoice from E.J. Prescott's for what looked like to be a machine rental. So a stone house warrant dated November 1st, 2021, $6,025.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Move on to minutes here. We've got the minutes of our last meeting, October 18th, and then we should have the one from the budget meeting on the 25th, which we do. Does anybody have any comments or corrections?
I just agree with the ones that Aaron had sent to Jen.
Yep, there was, in the, let's see, I just wanna make sure I'm getting the right ones, not the work session. The one dated Monday, October 18th, in the section talking about the BEI, committee, it said that, I'm gonna not find it now, but, that it's, the way that it was phrased sounded like, that both Jessica and I were more in favor of quarterly meetings. And we had said in different ways, but had both said that we were looking for, you know, that we liked the idea of the 6 every other, you know, the every other month. But recognize that there's also staff constraints, and so would want to hear feedback from staff as well.
And we're gonna revisit that whole discussion on the 18th, or the 15th, for the 7th time now today must be. For the 15th, we're gonna check in with staff on what's possible. And I think a lot of us are doing due diligence on the subject now with the time that we've been given. So it'll be interesting to check in with everybody and see where their perspectives are. But yeah, so how do we want to correct that language to better represent your sentiments? Aaron?
I just want to make sure I'm getting,
Aaron already provided that to me earlier today.
Is that in the copy in our packets then?
No.
So do we by statute, Jen, have to approve minutes within a certain amount of time? I know certain municipal boards meet on a monthly basis.
We have to post them within 5 days, but the final approval of it,
Can be within a
do at
month
the next
roughly.
meeting if you really wanted to.
You wanna just get a fresh draft in front of, I don't
Sure.
know. Okay.
Yep.
And we'll just go through them on the 18th. So let's, 15th. I don't know why I
Right.
keep saying 18th.
because to, you know, to Jen's credit, I didn't see it until when I was looking at them yesterday and sent the email,
Right.
and she usually gives us good deadlines, so I missed that. So,
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm just, so we'll approve the minutes of the 18th with the corrected version at our next meeting on the 15th. So we have the special meeting minutes, our budget work session from October 25th. Does anybody have any correction? Okay, hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve our, select board meeting minutes from, is it Monday, October 25th?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now we're on to public comment.
Excuse
Agenda
me,
item number
Brendan, I
4.
didn't hear who seconded that.
Brian.
Thank you.
No problem. So now we're on to agenda item 4, public comment. So with public participation by Zoom, the best way to do it is to raise your hand if you can. If not, please turn your camera on and actually raise your hand in the camera, and we'll do our best. So I see Dr. Jennifer Williamson would like to make a comment. Carrie, do you want to reiterate what our timing rules are in case there are multiple comments tonight, so we give everybody the same slate before we kick off? 3 minutes?
Believe so, I was just gonna check, but
Okay.
let's start there. Jen can usually be quite succinct, so let's start with 3, and I will put a timer.
Okay, Dr. Williamson, the floor is yours.
Okay. The select board reorganized the police advisory committee to improve citizen participation and oversight of how our community is policed. Currently, the PAC is not operating as intended. As the chair, I'm given no information between meetings on which to base an agenda. In addition, information that committee members have requested have not been included in data from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. We have also requested that there be a way for citizens to contact our committee with concerns between surveys, but that is still not something that is on the current website as of a few minutes ago, although I've been asking since the site was revamped months ago. And the expectations that this select board wrote out less than 1 year ago states that the Police Advisory Committee shall proactively seek input from community members on policing practices within the town no less than twice annually. I was quite surprised by all the comments last time of immediately cutting us back to, quarterly meetings or every other month meetings. I think that is nowhere near enough. We have to have citizen participation, and we have not had that yet. And to cut us back from 2 surveys to 1 survey before we even have the results from the 1 survey just seems way too in advance. Like, we should not be making that decision anywhere near now. After speaking to other police advisory committees, they act independently of the town councils or select boards and paid town members. It is not something that they have somebody who writes the agenda, collects all the information, basically walks through the agenda. My job so far on the police advisory committee as chair has been in name only. It's been for me sitting there and Corey Parent saying, okay, Jen, start the committee. Okay, Jen, end the committee. And we need to stop that. We need to have our own committee as citizens. That's why you asked us to volunteer for this committee. If what you want is a bunch of city or town employees doing it, then that's what you should have. But you wanted citizen involvement, which is what the Police Advisory Committee should be and has not been as of yet. I've already addressed this to Corey, and we'll be discussing it at our next meeting. But I just want you to be aware that before you start cutting us back and cutting us out, that we're not doing what we should be doing. Also, as far as the BEI committee goes, we really need a lot of citizen participation. Again, we don't need a lot of oversight from paid employees or select board members. This should be a group of citizens who live in those communities and diverse cultures and diverse LGBTQIA and BIPOC and neurodiverse and disabled communities, and have these experiences on a regular basis and can bring that information to you as the select board so that you can make appropriate decisions. To have somebody constantly sitting over them and saying, you can't talk about these things, it just makes a completely useless committee. So I want to make sure that if we're going forward with these, and I would love to make sure that we're going forward with these, that these are actual legitimate committees that have the ability to have discussions and gather information and bring that information back to you as select board members. That is not how the PAC has been run. And as we're seeing the BEI being discussed, it doesn't look like that's how it will be run. And I want to make sure that is not the case. So thank you.
Okay, so my question is, the comments provided to the board, is that from, Dr. Williamson, private citizen, or from Dr. Williamson, chair of the Police Advisory Committee?
Both. I am both. I am a citizen and I am the chair. I would love to speak to you as the chair, and I've never been asked. I never have anything to report anyways.
To make comments on behalf of the group as its chairperson, you would have first had to go to the group, lay the comments out, and seek consensus to bring them to the select board. Did you do that?
No.
So the Police Advisory Committee hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in on a whole on the comments that you just delivered to the board?
No.
So I would ask that before we discuss it, that the committee be given an opportunity to weigh in, and that we You know, we appreciate the feedback, but before we consider any type of a committee altering action that we, like removing professional staff or placing any additional powers in the hands of private citizens, that we first hear from the entire board and that a recommendation be made on motion. I've been made aware of this, made aware of your feelings a few days ago and recommended that path forward. Because, and I guess I'll speak to you chair to chair. We as chairpersons only have authority given to us by our boards and policy, or by consensus or by motion. And if we don't have the police advisory committee weighing in on these recommendations, and I don't know if we want to entertain them without them having the opportunity to have a discussion and for all of us to be able to read the minutes of that discussion. But I'll open the floor up if anybody else wants to make a comment on that subject.
Well, I think there's probably two pieces to it, right? Like she can go back to the board and they can come up with a statement and a recommendation to bring to the select board that we can discuss and have it on our agenda. But I think the other piece is, as we're thinking about the DEI committee, to have that in the back of our minds of what a committee can be. I mean, I know I got to speak to the vice chair of the police advisory group for the city, just to, because I know they don't have staff oversight, and she said it's been working beautifully for them, and they actually enjoy not having the staff oversight. They get a lot of work done, and then they're able to bring it to the board or the city council for discussion and approval. But I think it's something for us to think about as we're thinking about our own diversity committee, that perhaps we don't need staff at every meeting.
So in responding to that, I'd reference a specific incident, well, not incident, but a happening at the police advisory committee that I was made aware of within the last month, I would say. We put out an anonymous survey to the community for policing input, and there was a response given anonymously with contact information to verify that it wasn't coming from a malicious source. You know, you gotta verify that the resident actually has the right to be a respondent. The staff was the only one that had access to the participants' information, and from what I gather, I don't know which member, but a member of the police advisory committee wanted contact information for that respondent to reach out over a specific written response. And that could have placed the town in a very sticky situation, given that we advertise it will protect, contact information when you make an anonymous complaint. So that is right in the back of my mind when we have this discussion over whether we should have committees without staff. In this day and age, there's a lot of opportunity to place yourself in a really rock and hard place, and if you don't have somebody that lives in that and is trained in that every day, that ultimately we as a select board, we create these advisory committees, and we're liable for anything that they do right or wrong at the end of the day.
But it could be written in a way where there's no action taken unless it's approved by the board. They can have a work group, they can come up with recommendations, and then they bring it to the board when it's time for action. I just think there's a group of people who want to do something to make our town a better place to live, make it more inclusive, and we're always itching for citizen involvement and never get it. And this is a group who really wants to be a part of it and wants to do something. And the point to me of having a citizen advisory group is they become the experts and they're advising us on the actions that should be taken.
It's just whether or not you need staff to be guardrails, so no one goes off the path and does something that could place the town or creates harm to a resident, or places the town in a position of being liable for something that's not good. So I could see where we talked about maybe limiting the staff's role, but to not have them in the room, I would be very uncomfortable. Just because we had an anonymous survey, and the police advisory committee's charged with that. So you'd be asking a private citizen to administer the survey themselves, and then if they did that and took that contact information in that one case and contacted that one citizen over a dissatisfied response with the sheriff's office, is my the generality of the situation was there was an outlier response that was specifically unpleased with the sheriff's department for one reason or another. I didn't read the actual response because I'm not on the police advisory committee. And we had a member that wanted contact information for that respondent to contact them individually to further discuss the complaint that was brought forward in an anonymous way. So that's just one example, but it makes me uncomfortable with the idea of having any committee that doesn't have staff assigned to
Well,
it.
maybe that needs to be written out. I mean, even as a select board member, I'm not gonna go reach out to someone. I know to funnel it through Carrie or you.
Right.
And you guys take the action. I mean, that just might be something to be educated on. I don't see it as a hard stop to this committee.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
the other thing that the city does, they meet, and then they do meet with the town manager in between meetings. The chair and the co-chair will go meet with the city manager, so that they're all on the same page.
How long has the city's, we were talking about police advisory, but how long has the city's DEI committee been running?
Oh, I'm talking about the police one.
Okay, the police advisory
yeah.
committee, okay.
Yeah, the DEI one, I don't know if it's up and running yet.
So are there representatives of the police department in every one of those meetings?
They can invite the chief, and they have direct access to him at any time, but I don't think he comes to every single meeting.
I appreciate the input on not wanting to cut resources, but I don't know at this point that I would, even if it came back as a recommendation of the entire committee, that I as an individual would support removing staff from that room.
I would just really love there to be more training, you can't speak on behalf of your board unless you have consensus from your board, so maybe there needs to be Robert Rules of Order training. I was under the impression when, for this instance, that Dr. Williamson had talked to her board when she reiterated her status as chair, so if that's the case, I want to be sure she understands what that means.
Right.
That you have to have the consensus of your board, and so without those guardrails, I'm a little concerned about what recommendations would come out of it. But that training is easy enough, we just have to.
There's probably some online training that we could
Schedule it,
require
yeah.
every chair of every
Yeah.
board in the town to take once a year. That could be something that comes with it. But
Right.
not to single anyone out, it could have easily could have been Casey too from behalf of the planning commission coming forward without consensus. It's
Yeah, I mean, we all have
just
to.
a point of order, I would say. So, does
So
anybody else have anything they want to add to that? The comment and the discussion around it?
I would just like more specific information about what you were looking for, Dr. Williamson, because at our last meeting, you stated you hadn't gotten the information you wanted from April, but as I would probably know, all of us know, April to June 30, that was the city PD. So I just try to be specific when you say, look, I asked for this information in April and this information maybe in July, I don't know. It just helps because we did actually transition, as we all know, in the middle of that period you were talking about. So there's two other people that raised their hand.
Okay, so we have,
Let's go to Preston. I think
Yep.
his name, he raised his hand first.
okay, Preston Fuller, you have the floor for 3 minutes, sir.
All right. Hey, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. I serve as the vice chair for the Police Advisory Committee, and I am not speaking on their behalf in regard to what was just discussed. But I came on to say something else, but I just want to first mention something, that the concern about it going to an individual who has provided anonymous information, that's not nearly the concern that it was. I was part of that meeting. It was simply asked that somebody had voiced the concern, should we contact that person? And it was suggested, no, but this is anonymous, and then we moved on. So it was not this really big concerning guardrail issue. It was just a simple question that was immediately mentioned, and we moved on. So it's not what it's being kind of suggested. I'll end at that. I really respect the time that people place, whether they're volunteer, whether they're elected, or they're employed in my own profession. And so my question is, and we can discuss this at Police Advisory Board, but I'm curious from a town's perspective. Is it okay by your bylaws for us to meet as an advisory committee with or without a town official present? I don't mind one being present whatsoever, but I don't want to see us cut down quarterly in order for another vital committee to be established. So my question to you is, are we able, as an advisory committee, a committee that does not vote or set policy, to be able to meet without a town official present, simply out of respect for their own time and energies as well? Because I really think it is vital for us as a police advisory committee, at least in this first year, with the sheriff's department being the law enforcement agency now for only 4 months, for us to meet on a regular basis, just as they establish themselves. I think it's just the right and ethical and moral thing to do. So that's my question. Are we able, as an advisory committee that does not set policy, to be able to meet when a town official simply does not have the time to meet? Thank you.
So, I refer to the town manager who says you are allowed to meet.
Yeah, I think you are.
The agenda has to be properly warned.
The guidelines are this board's, you know, the select board sets policies, so.
Well, what does that policy specifically say,
We
though?
don't-
Did we have anything in there that said a staff person has to be present?
I don't think we have a policy on our boards that states that.
Well, we have one on the police advisory committee that we created. It took a while.
Correct, but I don't believe we thought of that question at that time, so I don't
Right.
think it's in that one.
Okay, so technically, yes, you just need to properly warn the agenda for open meeting law, as all town boards do. So I guess do you have anything else to add to that, Carrie? I think that's a pretty direct answer to the question.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I think you can meet. I guess I would probably benefit from meeting with you, like Jess alluded to, maybe once a month to find out what you're up to, what your goals are, if I can help, and make sure we're meeting all of our other rules, really.
I guess I would ask the board, do we want, because we never had that discussion as part of creating the police advisory committee policy. Did we envision, like I always envision having somebody from administration in the room helping to act as a conduit between the committee and the sheriff's office. Now, I never thought that staff person would run the meetings and effectively be the committee as been suggested. But I thought that, you know, somebody'd be there to offer advice. If there was an issue, we could have that staff person, you know, put a stop to anything that might happen, and act as a resource. So I don't know. There's not a single town board or committee that meets at present without staff. So this would be new territory for us.
I think, you know, for myself, having served on the planning commission as the chair of that, you know, having, especially for the planning commission, having staff support was pretty vital and crucial. So I think I came into thinking about the police advisory committee in a similar way because I had that experience. But I also remember saying at the time that part of having the police advisory committee is having the folks come together and then make those suggestions back to us, because they're going to know, they're going to have that perspective and be able to let us know, okay, how do things need to be tweaked with this committee in order to meet their goals and the goals that we set forward for them. So I think if we end up with a recommendation from the police advisory committee for a different structure, and also it sounds like they could meet without staff support right now as is. So if they were to do that and they're not, you know, they're following the guidelines that we have, I don't have a problem with that. I also think if they come forward with a specific recommendation to codify, I would be willing to listen to it. I don't know what my answer would be. I think it would depend on the whole conversation. But I am open to hearing the recommendations of the committee for what they see as how they can best achieve their goals.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Aaron's point. I'd be open to listening to any recommendation made by the committee to this board.
Of course.
So Brian seems to agree. Jessica, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, not beyond what I said.
Okay.
I'm definitely interested in exploring other options and structures for both these committees to help alleviate the staff time and also to help them have the voice that they want in our town and to feel like they can bring, a wide variety of ideas to us.
Okay, Jonathan, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Not too much. I just think if anybody wants to like start a group and like bring ideas to the select board, I mean, feel free.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not trying to sound like, but you know what I mean? I don't know if, does it really need town oversight?
If anybody wants to meet, not as I think when we create a specific town committee as part of the town organization, there should be some level of oversight because we have obligations to open meeting law, like minute taking and whatnot, so.
Yeah, I think, someone on the committee would have to be the minute taker.
Right.
But I think having it under the town umbrella is going to help them and us move ideas forward quicker. Like having been on both types of committees, when you're the outside always coming in, it's a lot harder to get anything done versus if they're meeting with Carrie once a month, she can help move things forward.
Gary, would you be willing to meet with a private committee of people on a regular basis to create a similar?
I absolutely would. I mean, I meet with individual citizens without appointments too. It's just, I would like advanced warning because it's getting a little busy.
A regular standing meeting with somebody?
But yeah,
would be,
I think it's helpful. I would just like to have a feel for what's going on, and I think it would help especially if we could maybe do it during the day. I just have a lot of night meetings right now, so afternoon, I don't know, we'll work on it, but yes, I absolutely can make time.
So we'll come back to the police advisory committee when there's a recommendation in front of us from their committee that's been passed through on to us, and then we'll come back to the discussion of a BEI committee on the 15th as we had planned.
And there was one other person who had a question. She had her hands up. So.
Okay, so.
I was actually going to speak about the BEI committee, but I'll come back on the 15th to discuss that.
You can make a public comment about anything you like.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right
You
ahead.
don't want to chase anybody.
So I was going to talk about why we should establish the BEI committee. I'm a recent transplant to Vermont, and I would like to bring more awareness to constituents to be involved in the town meetings. I find it very interesting how few town citizens show up to the meetings. I actually didn't know about them, and they're not posted on the Facebook page, which I found also very interesting. I also would like to make other Vermonters feel welcome here. It's an interesting transition moving from a larger city or a rural town. I come from a rural town than this prior. And I also think BEI would be great to bring people from all walks of life. I'm a mother and a wife to a law enforcement officer, and I'm a reservist. And so we've been able to travel and see so many different things. Sorry, my son's talking. And so I think it'd be great to bring a BEI committee to the town, and we would be able to bring such more diversity to it. Because I've noticed within the meetings and the few things I've been able to attend, it seems like the same people show up all the time. It'd be nice to bring more people into the town to have more of a voice.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comment. Yeah, with a resume like the one you just gave us, we'll have to ask if you'd be willing to join any of our other committees like Parks or the Planning Commission or the Development Review Board. We'd love to have you.
Oh, I would love to join that type of stuff. I was in several committees in my last rural town, and one of the comments I want to make about the oversight is the last town we lived in was a town about 2,500. I was in the fire department there, and we really didn't have much oversight within the small town. We did meet with our select board every so often, but we were able to bring a lot of concerns to them when needed, and we were able to give. We did a lot of surveys too, but we did do SurveyMonkey, so people were only given the contact information when they wanted to. If that makes sense. And I think Google Docs, you have to give your contacts, and that doesn't make it as anonymous as other sources has. So I would think maybe changing it from Google Docs to something more anonymous, like SurveyMonkey, would be a little better for the constituents. So it would be generally anonymous, and they choose to have a follow-up, it can be an option there.
Well, ma'am, it looks like the chair and I'm sure the vice chair of our police advisory committee that are charged with rolling those surveys out just heard that recommendation. I'm sure they're gonna take it to heart. And we appreciate it.
This kind of pains my heart because I always welcome people who are new people in the town. And I give them a town report. And that kind of pains my heart. She's never come to town hall before.
We can,
We moved in the middle, right when COVID started, so it was really hard for us to actually go anywhere. We moved beginning of April of last year. So being able to go into anything was very difficult.
I get that. I get that.
So I understand where you're coming from. It is hard, but I don't think everybody realizes that the town hall is open for people just to walk in and speak to them. Because in larger cities where I'm from, you don't just walk in and speak to officials. So I think it might be nice for people to know the policy that you're able to walk in and just meet up with the chair or the city manager without an appointment. Because I would have never thought of just walking in and speaking to people.
I tell you, if you would ever like to meet with any one of us, individually, myself included, our contact information, including my email and cell phone number, are under the town select board page on our website, and you can reach out to me whenever you'd like.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
Oh, that's terrible. That's just terrible.
What was that? Can we mute that participant, Carrie?
I don't know who that was.
Bottom right-hand corner. Not to call anybody out, but let's mute.
That wasn't.
Okay.
I would love to meet you. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and we welcome you to the community, and we look forward to hearing your perspective on different issues. And we have openings at, over various committees that we already have in place. And if you'd be willing to participate, I think this board would love to hear more about what interests you and what we have available. And thank you for coming to tonight's meeting.
And welcome to the town.
Thank you. We really, really love it here, and we hope to stay here for a while. So thank you. And my husband and I would probably be willing to stop by, hopefully this week or next week.
Perfect.
All right, thank you so much. I think I got everyone who had a question, so we can move forward.
Okay. So, not seeing any other hands up, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is the town manager's report. Gary, take it away.
Awesome. So the first item, Emily Sherrington, who's our stormwater coordinator, is on Zoom here. There's Emily. She sent a memo to the select board regarding, I guess, a policy decision that we need to make as a town in a timely manner. So she set out 3 different options to address some of these expired stormwater permits. That's as much framework as I feel comfortable saying. Emily is much more qualified than I to answer questions, but do you have any other comments you want to start with, Emily?
I'll just preface the whole conversation. So when I came on board, our MS4 permit is not fully valid because we haven't submitted our phosphorus control plan yet, which is currently in the works. And so we should be able to submit it with our annual report for our MS4 permit April 1st. But because of that, the state initially was telling us that they would not let us roll any permits in under our MS4 permit, which in going back through old town notes, that is what the town determined to be the route we were going to take. So we have a number of expired permits, and now we have a fast approaching deadline for any of these permits that are in an impaired watershed, which most of them are. Both Stevensbrook and Rugbrook are impaired. And so if any of these permits are within those areas, they have a December 1st deadline to submit an initial NOI, which all that does is give them a valid permit for 18 months. In which time they are supposed to be designing an actual system to install. And so at the 18-month mark, they submit their plans to the state, they file an official NOI, and then that kickstarts a 5-year period that gives them 5 years to implement the actual design. And so there's essentially 3 different options that we have for these permits. And I sort of eliminated from the top the private permits because I don't think that it's in the town's best interest to absorb those into our MS4. And just in my work historically, that is not a route we ever took. It's usually if the town or city has an interest in utilizing the system, then they would talk to a private area to expand the system to accommodate some of the town stormwater. But in these situations, I think what we're really looking at are the HOAs, which I put on the table that's in that packet, and then the 2 nonprofits, the Church of the Rock and Hawks Nest, the Northwest Medical Center site. So I think we really need to consider how we're going to treat them because they all fall into the impaired watershed. So they have a December 1st deadline to apply. And the state, so initially the state said we couldn't roll them in. And I talked to the state a week ago and they've changed their stance slightly so that they will allow us to roll them in. It would clear the titles for the homeowners. So if they're in the middle of a sale or something, they're able to go through with it and it would protect them. And then it would bide us some time to get the legal language in place with the HOAs that they're on the hook for financial obligations to upgrade the systems to current standards. And if an HOA decides that they don't want to partner with us, then we can then again amend our MS4 permit to exclude that permit number from our MS4. So I guess that's the long and the short. I think the only other point is that if we do cover one of these systems under our MS4 permit, we are obligated to perform the maintenance on the system, which none of these are enormous systems or a huge obligation, in my opinion. I don't think that that's a big task. A lot of them are pretty well maintained at this point by the homeowners, but they do need some work that will have to get done anyway. And that's something that we can definitely build into the budget to have a plan going forward to work with it. Yeah, I think that's the best description I can give. So I think if you have questions, definitely let me know because I know there's a lot to take in.
Okay, so it seems like our backs are up against the wall with these homeowners here. We have deadlines coming soon. And, I think whenever possible, it's incumbent upon us to help people avoid title issues, especially with a state permitting database and staff that has been stretched thin for 20 years.
I think, and it's my understanding and looking through old notes is that this is what the town promised once we became an MS4 community. I think the town promised that we would take these in. So I think it's sort of a, like, do we do it now or do we do it later conversation? But if we do it later, there's just more cost that they have to endure up front. Whereas if we do it now, it doesn't really set us back anywhere because we're proposing to take them in anyway.
Well, fair enough, I would say.
Yeah, I think your recommendation seems the appropriate response.
Absolutely. Yeah. So do we need a specific motion to move forward with this? John,
it would be preferred but not required. So you're, as a consensus, you're saying you're good with Emily's recommendation to proceed with option 2 of rolling expired permits under the MS4 permit. I'll make sure we're clear about what we just saw.
Okay.
Yes to.
Do we have a list of specific permits? Like,
So on the list that's in that packet, it's the HOAs and then the two nonprofits that, well, and the town industrial park, that's a private shared town permit. But within that, I will say that Pineview Estates has already started the process of their initial NOI. And so I've been in conversation with them and I think they're in decent shape. So I don't think we need to rush to roll them in. I think we could always do it like when we're ready, when they're ready. I think we can roll them in. No harm done by waiting there. The school, I've been in conversation with the school and they asked us initially if we would roll them in. And I advised them to not take that route at this point because they have a considerable amount of state and federal funding available if they're not covered by the MS4, but they're under their own permit. And so they are taking that route and they're prepared to file for their initial NOI in December. But of all of the other ones, the HOAs, I would say we should roll in at this time. And then the two nonprofits.
I got a couple questions.
Okay. Go ahead.
You said we gotta do some maintenance to these ponds or whatever they are. So what's roughly the cost and will that be paid for out of the stormwater fund? Like, is there money set aside for these maintenance items?
Yeah, it'll all be paid for out of the stormwater fund. I'll figure it out once. I'll have to go through all of these systems. I know one of them recently came up with our phosphorus control plan work that we're actively working on. And that one got called out. I think that was the Pleasant View. And so that's a pond at this time that needs to get cleaned out. It has a lot of cattails and things like that. So a lot of these maintenance costs, the systems, thankfully, well, sort of thankfully, are so simple. A lot of it is roadside ditches or like grass swales. They're not complicated. Like gravel wetlands are sort of the most complicated system, and that's where a major maintenance cost would come in. A lot of these, if they're a pond, is cleaning out the forebay, getting the sediment out of the forebay. It's not much. And then in rolling forward, I was talking to Alan recently about what he's been doing for maintenance on the ones that the town does maintain. And he's been holding it to a higher level than what's required by the state. And so we have some cushion there too. Like we're only required to mow them twice a year. And Alan said his crew's been mowing some of them, like weekly. So I think there's some cushion in some of it with the maintenance because some of them have been held to a higher bar than what they need to be.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Emily, do you, by doing this, money aside, do you think this is gonna move the town quicker toward better stormwater?
Yes. So the other piece of it is that in the phosphorus control plan, to get credit for our phosphorus removal, we have to be actively maintaining the system. So when I had the consultant, Watershed Consulting, start working on the phosphorus control plan, they had all of these systems built into their analysis to see how much we had to capture. But we can't actually claim those credits until we are physically maintaining them. And so in that light, it's the easiest way to get our phosphorus credit. And some of them will have to get modified slightly just with the FRP requirements, but a lot of the requirements aren't that drastic. So we're in pretty good shape.
Okay. I was gonna basically kind of asking the same question, I guess, but so I assume this is good for these folks. And it's good for the town in general?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's the best scenario for these folks. And I know, we can work on the legal agreement, how we want it verbalized. I know in South Burlington, we had a 20-year commitment to take over maintenance and acceptance of the system. So it's not an ultimatum that we have to own it forever, that we have to keep that permit. We can, in 20 years or whatever time frame, determined to be appropriate, we can roll it back and say, you really have to deal with this. Or I would imagine at that point, the utility will be established enough that we'll be in good standing and it won't be hard to keep things going. But
Emily,
I think there's always that protection also.
Emily, if we roll these expired permits into our MS4 permit, do they cease to exist, period? Like, they're just.
No, I mean, that's sort of what I'm saying. Like, if we decide to, so they sort of on paper, they cease to exist immediately. But if any of these HOAs don't agree to our terms, we can kick them back out of the MS4 and then they're back on their old expired permit. And in 20 years, if something happens, if it's too costly to maintain, or if something, like the utility folds, whatever happens, we can kick them out and they're back on their expired permit. So there's a few loopholes that we can still get out of it if need be. But it completely protects them in the meantime and clears it clears them from any, it just clears all their titles.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, there are some pretty big corporations and, large homeowners associations that have been active for a lot of years with these expired permits. Would you say that their permits and their systems not being up to date is more of a reflection on them or on the state?
I would say the latter.
So you would say
I mean,
that
some of these, like Gricebrook, that permit applies to a system that was never even installed. And somehow the state made them pay for a permit and gave them a permit and never verified that anything was being done. So there is no existing active permit, active treatment on Gricebrook property. I mean, aside from a couple of catch basins. It was supposed to have 2 different detention ponds.
and in Gricebrook, I think we can speak to the fact that Gricebrook and a couple of their buildings have had significant flooding issues requiring the town fire department to respond and pump out basements before. I can remember hearing that feedback from residents of that neighborhood.
And currently their runoff is causing major issues on the school property.
Yeah.
And you're working with the city to capture runoff from Gricebrook and the St. Albans State Highway on a gravel wetland, as my understanding. You're working on a kind of a multilateral project.
Yes, exactly. So Gricebrook is sort of half of the Gricebrook watershed is Rugbrook. And so the city designed a gravel wetland that will help treat that half of it. But the other half goes to Stevensbrook. And so that's in our flow restoration plan. And that one proposes a system being built on the school property, and either getting an easement or outright purchasing. I think I've been working with the school pretty closely, so I would imagine that they'd be pretty accommodating to us at this point, because it would also help them. It would help their runoff further on downstream. So yeah, Gricebrook's a little bit tricky because it's on 2 different watersheds and in 2 different flow restoration plans.
I guess I don't want to be the sole reason why anybody has a cloud on their title that they don't deserve, but also there's some really expensive projects on this list that, if we absorb these permits, then it could be portrayed that we're taking that commitment on, even though, like, you see Tanglewood Estates, we have an MOI or U with the HOA that says the town will pay for, half of the local match, and the homeowners association will pay the other half in the event that we receive a grant, is my understanding. So
That one is a 75-25 town split. The way I would propose it for any of these systems is whatever the town impervious is, that's the percentage that we would pay. So a lot of these have town roads within their impervious surface areas. So that's the percentage that the town would pay on those systems.
So if we say as a board that we're authorizing staff to absorb these permits into our MS4 permit, are you going to approach them all individually with some kind of an MOU or a contract that states that we can opt out at any time and that there'll be other conditions to be, metered out later on down the line? Or do you already have the
Yeah,
conditions pretty well figured?
Absolutely. I've already been in communication with quite a few of them, not all of them. I've been trying to track them down. A lot of them don't have HOAs established with the Secretary of State. And I think the new 90/50 rules require that they do. So that might be, I'm working with the state to get me any HOA contact that they have. I've gotten quite a few over the last couple weeks, but it's not a complete list yet. But I think exactly, Brendan, I think we need to tell them exactly what percentage we're willing to go after. Some of the other protection it gives them, I know in working with Gricebrook, they just established their HOA a few years ago. So they have $20,000 or something in the bank. Very little money to go towards, the system that the city designed is a $470,000 gravel wetland, which 30% of that or quarter of that, somewhere in that ballpark, is Gricebrook. So they don't have the money for that by any means. And so it would give some of these HOAs a little bit more time to get established. It gives us more time to go after grant funding to help pay for them and figure out the best grant to apply to go after. And some of them don't need huge lifts to get them back into compliance. Some of them will, by all means.
Okay, so we can I say move forward with folding these permits into our MS4 permit to alleviate title issues, and those that under the understanding that they're gonna have to sign something that states that the terms of any agreement that we have with either their corporation or their legal entity or their HOA are still up to discussion after we do that. And if we can't reach a agreement, that they revert back to their expired permit. So it leaves us with the leverage that we need to make decisions that make financial sense for the taxpayer as a whole, while still helping people to not have title defects. And I would say, as terrible as it sounds, if you can't get in touch with anybody from certain HOAs or places before the December 1st date and they expire and they become title defects, then I guess they'll have to reach out to the town or figure out what they're going to do when they try to sell and realize that they can't. I mean, if you can't reach everyone, if you can't find all the contact information, eventually they'll probably be coming to you.
Yeah, so I guess my proposal would be to roll them in now. That way they're protected. And then no matter what, we have to submit our MS4 permit application for April 1st, which will include our phosphorus control plan and our annual report. And so at that time, if we have not heard from all of these HOAs and have legal agreements with them, then I would kick them back out then.
That sounds fair to me. That sounds fair to me. So we're helping everyone now. We're kind of going out on a limb, recognizing this deadline. And I would hope, individually that buys you goodwill when we negotiate the terms of the ongoing relationship.
So I guess that said, let's make it like a mid-March deadline or something, because that way I can make the amendment in time to submit for April 1. Does that work?
It works. That sounds great.
Okay.
So do we need a specific motion or just, the stormwater coordinator?
We were talking about every one of the ones listed on here, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
HOAs and nonprofits, not school or private. The only private one is the industrial park that we're already a partner on the permit.
Okay, so all HOAs and nonprofits.
And I mean, you can see, I'll name communities. I mean, you got Meadowbrook, Tanglewood, Gricebrook, Clyde Allen. I mean, these are community, neighborhoods that we've known have had stormwater issues almost since they were built. So this is the town using the fee income that we impose to hire qualified people to fix issues so people don't have title defects. It's almost worth issuing a press release. A lot of folks wondered why we impose a stormwater utility and its fee. This is why. There are people that couldn't sell their home at Christmas if we didn't take this action today. And the only reason we're taking it is because of Emily and her expertise. And we wouldn't have the money to pay her without the stormwater utility. So it's kind of like a soapbox moment defending the utility and the fee. So we should do our best to reverberate out the decision that was made tonight and what the implications were, and that it was made in the context that, you know, we're going to help people now because that's the right thing to do. We're going to define agreements that make sense for all parties, and then anybody that we can't reach an agreement with will revert back to their expired permit by the time we file our MS4 permit in April. But the stormwater utility was the vehicle to keeping, you know, over a dozen expired permits from turning into title defects. And that's worth noting. I mean, we were sitting here roughly a year ago. It was a 3-2 vote on whether the committee would exist. And if it didn't, you know, these folks would be dealing with a really tough issue should they, you know, I just saw yesterday, or a couple of days ago, that there was a listing in Gricebrook. You know, say that person takes an offer from somebody that had a showing over the weekend, they accept, they go to close right before Christmas, maybe they're going south or to a new home, and then they find out their stormwater permit's expired, they can't close. We're alleviating that problem and using the stormwater utility to do it. So that's a very real positive impact in the community that the utility's already having, let alone the effects that it'll, and the ongoing successes that we'll have with water quality, which is the chief goal. But it's worth pointing out every way that the utility works. That way, you know, no board 5 years in the future goes, what does that ever do? And then, you know, disbands it somehow. So with that said, I think we need a motion to authorize the stormwater utility coordinator to include all of the HOA and nonprofit permits listed here, and I guess we'll name them all out just for the record.
And plus running that bottom one too.
Right, and well, are we already on that one, the industrial park?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a shared permit that we're on.
So I'm gonna name them all out for the record because I think that's probably the most transparent way of doing it. Pleasant View Estates, McCracken's Homestead Estates, Hill Farm Estates, Sunset Terrace, Tanglewood Estates, the Church of the Rock, the Gricebrook Retirement Community, St. Albans Milk and Maple, no, that's private, sorry. Phase 3 of Sunset Terrace, Northwestern Medical Center / Hawks Nest, Pineview Estates, a mobile home park owned by Champlain Chevrolet, Meadowbrook Lane, Clyde Allen Drive, and that's it. So those are the permits that we're considering rolling into our MS4 permit.
Did you get the town industrial park, Brendan, that last one?
Okay,
I thought you said that was already, we were already on it.
Well, it's, we are paying an annual fee for that 4262 permit.
Yep.
So if we roll it under our MS4, it would just come out of our MS4 allocation instead of having a separate permit fee.
So I will amend my language to include the St. Albans Town Industrial Park permit.
Yes.
Thank you.
So would anyone like to make a motion to roll those permits as spoken to be within our MS4 permit?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I guess on a point of order question, we wanted to dig into the ordinance at some point and make any changes that Emily or any other member of staff might be necessary once the utility was up and running.
Mm-hmm.
I know everyone's busy, and I'm not asking that be done tomorrow like I like to do. But I think at some point we said that the Stormwater Utility Commission was going to be the select board. So like with the Liquor Control Board, when we make these decisions in the future, should we be recessing as the select board and reconvening as the Stormwater Utility Commission? Or in this case, I don't know. I mean,
I don't think we need to, right? Wasn't that, didn't we talk about that before?
I don't think so, but.
Because it's not a state thing or something to that effect, right?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay.
Can't remember.
I have been working on edits for the note.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, probably right after the holidays when we get that ballot set for March and the budget's done with, for the most part, we can start focusing on some housekeeping things between now and town meeting day. If we can find the time. Usually there's always something that piles up, but we want to make sure that the ordinance is one that you can work within and get your tasks done, and that doesn't put you at a disadvantage for any reason.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, we should move on.
We should.
Get along.
Okay.
Thank you
We
all.
got people waiting. They're doing a lot of good work, but we gotta keep it.
Yeah,
Thank you, Emily.
absolutely.
We have a couple people for our next one under the Northwest Communication District. Sean's been hinting that we should at least get some information on this. So we have Sean times two here, Sean Coleman and Sean Gill. I'm not sure who wants to go first. I did forward the information you sent us, so we have a background here.
That's my spiel. I'll defer to Sean, the other Sean.
Would it be helpful? I don't know if you have the ability to look at a visual or not, but I can put up a slide if that's helpful. If not, I can talk right through it. Which do you prefer?
Why don't you just talk right through it? I think we have the handout, so unless you have something super compelling, I think that'll.
Yeah, no, sure. We haven't had an opportunity to officially speak with St. Albans Town yet. The Northwest Communications Union District was created or founded in August of 2020. The first three members were the town of Venusburg, Montgomery, and Fairfax. We now have grown to 16 member communities. The latest additions were Swanton and the village of Swanton, which were just in the last couple of weeks. I always like to kind of start with the problem, like what are we trying to solve? We're trying to bring high-speed broadband to every premise within the district. And how big is that problem? Along with the new additions, we are roughly the current size is roughly 19,079 premises. Of that, 2,612 are unserved. They have zero connectivity. And 8,417 are considered underserved, not meeting the FCC definition of broadband, which takes us to approximately 48% of all premises within the Northwest CUD do not have adequate broadband connectivity. That's always kind of good to kind of lay that out right at the very beginning to explain kind of what the problem is and what we're trying to solve. Our overall goals is to have universal access. Everyone has the same level of service, regardless of what side of the street you live on or in what town. We have chosen to pursue fiber to the premise, fiber to the home, fiber to the business. We want to use fiber optic technologies to deliver that service. There's a number of reasons why, but primarily it's the best commercially available product that we can do that and not have to ultimately replace that infrastructure in a short period of time. Certainly it's costly to build that out, but you'll likely hear the term that fiber optics is future-proof, and that is somewhat true in that it's the technology on either end of that cable that is the limitation, and not necessarily the fiber optic cable itself. We are seeking to prioritize the under and unserved first. We want to develop a reliable and affordable infrastructure, and the Vermont Community Broadband Board had a press conference this morning, and all the CUDs, including us, have committed to having 100% coverage for every home who is not currently served or underserved within 5 years. And we are on track to begin some form of implementation or construction, ideally in 2022. Quick look back, kind of some of our accomplishments over just kind of the last year and a half or so. I mentioned we were founded in August of 2020. We collaborated with NRPC on the Broadband Innovation Grant and completed a regional feasibility. St. Albans was a part of that. They looked at the entire region and not necessarily just the district. We did a region-wide survey to further assess broadband need, deployed 19 free Wi-Fi hotspots at community centers, libraries. I want to say Highgates is at the hockey arena. We applied for several grants, worked with the legislature, both on a number of bills. Most importantly was H360, which we were recently awarded some significant funding for capacity, as well as doing a poll survey along with support from the electric utilities. We did hire an executive director. I've been on the job for now 2 weeks. So I am the newly appointed executive director of the Northwest CUD. Looking ahead, we're going to continue to have discussions with the utilities, as well as regional, local, and national providers to find out what partnerships make the best sense for our district. Something that sets us a little bit apart from some of the other CUDs is we're highly considering or seeking an open access model. The best description, the best kind of analogy for open access is we want to build the infrastructure and allow several providers to deliver services. So if you think of us in terms of like an airport, we want to be the airport and allow several airline carriers to provide their services. So ultimately, that's kind of our model that we're seeking to be. And the primary reasons for that is competitive choice. We've seen models through the country that ultimately, if a consumer has choice, that the competitors have to compete for both price and the quality of service. So that's something that we're actively seeking. We have our RFP out for the business plan, which will be making a selection for that consultant this week. We'll work through that to the end of the year, and hopefully get into design and engineering within Q1 of next year. So that's kind of where we're at. We've been busy, certainly, but wanted to certainly give you guys as much information as you need, or if you have any other questions. We primarily focused on the communities who are of the most need initially, the communities that had the biggest. I did take a look at St. Albans numbers just before this meeting to understand it. Obviously, much like Swanton, there's not a giant need of unserved, but certainly there is a percentage that is there for folks who are underserved. Every community is facing this challenge, is that kind of the state mandated goal of what the state has kind of dictated that everyone wants to achieve is a minimum of 100 megabytes over 100. So 100 upload, 100 download. And no community outside of Burlington really has solved this issue. So that's our commitment as well, is that at a minimum, our universal service will be 100 over 100. And St. Albans as well is one of those communities that certainly could use an infrastructure that can supply that. Many of the communities in our district, our entire district only has 4% that meets that state goal. So it's very minimal. And St. Albans is a part of that. So we wanted to officially invite the town of St. Albans to be a part of the CUD and the progress that we're making.
Thank you very much, Sean, and we appreciate you wading through our other discussions that we had before getting to you. And we
Not a problem.
We congratulate you on your hiring, and we look forward to watching you lead the communication district. And I guess I just have 3 basic questions after reading your the information you provided to Carrie, and it's been passed on to the board. And I'm going to quote part of it just for the record and for anyone listening to this meeting, because I think it'll provide context that'll inform our decision pretty well. There are no direct costs to the taxpayer or the municipality in joining a CUD. A CUD may ask a municipality to provide space for a communications plant used to store fiber optic cable, electronics, and other assets required to operate the network. Membership in a CUD proposes no financial risk to the municipality or individual taxpayers by state statute, meaning taxpayer dollars will not be used if the CUD fails. And if the CUD fails, no liability falls to the member municipalities or taxpayers. And then you cite the statute.
Title 30.
Yeah, so it's title. Yeah. So I guess my only question are, we know the only thing you're asking for us is to send a representative and an alternate. My only question, just from a fundamental perspective, before we make a motion to join, is, Sean, how are you being paid roughly? Through a grant, or is there a municipality in the membership that's providing funds? Where's your office space based out of? And how are you paying for ongoing expenses? I see that there's no direct financial impact to the taxpayer, but we want to make sure that if we join, this thing's set up to really deliver on the mission.
Yeah, we are 100% grant funded at this point. At some point along the way, we may seek some private funding, as well as we will have the ability to access revenue bonding. But we are at this point 100% grant funded. The H360 grant that we just received was for just under $605,000, which was for a number of things, and that was maybe a quarter to a third of the reserved bucket under which the Vermont Community Broadband Board has. They've allocated a little more than $3.5 million to the Northwest Communications Union District for operational expenses and pre-construction, getting us ready. So we're funded to operate for some time and to get us to that point of construction, and then there's additional funds beyond that. Certainly, this isn't an easy thing, but we're.
That was the exact answer I was hoping you were going to give. Just with
Yeah.
higher numbers than I thought you would give. $3.5 million sounds really nice.
Yeah, we and then we're 100% remote at this point. We have not had a discussion. This is what you see here is HQ for now. But we will likely seek some office space, certainly once we start bringing on some additional staff. We've currently budgeted for 2 additional staff in 2022. Project management, kind of network operations, as well as some administrative support. So those are 2 staff that we've budgeted for to bring on next year.
Okay, that sounds awesome. I guess my last question is, you alluded that the district has the opportunity to access bonds. So how would you pay the debt service on those bonds? Would be my question.
Yeah, we're early yet.
Okay. That's a fair answer. You can leave it at that.
It is. Yeah, we are. We just had to go through the 2022 budget exercise and then push that out. We do have a hearing on the 11th for that budget. That budget was a challenge, I'll be honest with you. It was a challenge not having our comprehensive business plan, which we, again, will make our selection this week for that consultant and work intensively with them through the end of the year to have that accomplished. At that point, we'll have a better idea. We've had a lot of conversations with the electric utilities about, we got to get our applications in for the polls, and we're just not ready. Ultimately, we have a lot of ground to make up, and we're going to be certainly have a busy rest of the fall, and I'll have a very busy winter.
So other municipalities that join, are they sending staff members as representatives mostly, or are they sending elected people, or are they finding people within the community that best fit the job description and appointing them? And what would you say is your most qualified, or what are you seeing, I guess, is my question.
It's mixed. I would say mostly it's concerned citizens. We've seen folks who are just frustrated, and honestly they're pissed at having years and years of bad internet, and they just want to be a strong advocate. We have others we have folks who are engineers in the mobile space. We have IT professionals, folks who work in private finance, project managers. We have kind of a mixed bag of good experience. So we've seen, I think we have maybe two. I'm trying to think, Sean, I know Swanton sends a staff.
Yeah,
Georgia sends staff,
there's
and I can't-
town administrators, Swanton Town Administrator, their economic development person, Fairfield sends their town administrator. Fairfax was sending their, as an alternate, their town manager. It's a mixed bag.
Yep.
And so how much time commitment would you need from this new board member? Is it once a month, once a quarter?
Our general board meets the first Thursday at 6 p.m. We now have a physical location, but we primarily meet remotely because we are pretty spread out. So all of our meetings are available virtually. And then we have subcommittee meetings that should that person elect to join. We have marketing, project management, operations, and finance. They don't have to join a subcommittee, but certainly they're able to do so. And those are kind of the preceding weeks. I can't remember exactly the order, but Thursday at 6 is kind of our slot for those meetings. And then our general board meets once a month, the first Thursday.
Okay. Just one quick question, Sean. You mentioned just the numbers, St. Albans Town, or you didn't mention the numbers. You said it was significant, and I'm assuming the definition of underserved was under 100 megabytes, you said.
Under would be under 25 megabytes, under 3. That's kind of the FCC and the state kind of considers underserved is under that. But the kind of state mandated goal 5 years from now is to have 100 over 100. And basically no one other than Burlington is able to say that they've been able to accomplish that.
Okay. I just wonder what percent of St. Albans Town, if you have that in front of you.
Yeah, sure, I do.
Yes,
Let's see, 93.5% has 25 over 3 or better. This is from 2019. The state did just release new data yesterday that I need to vet yet and understand. But it also shows that St. Albans Town has 79 unserved, meaning they have no connectivity. And then according to this, 0.2% meets the 100 over 100 goal.
Okay, so I think we have all the information we need to decide to join the NWCUD. Sorry, a lot of acronyms in municipal government. I'm learning.
We're working on the name.
So let's entertain a motion. Would anyone like to make one?
So moved?
To join?
Yes.
Have the town join. Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Would anyone like to second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
If I could vote, Sean, I'd be voting to join too. But you got a unanimous result regardless. And so we're gonna probably have a discussion, Carrie and I, over, before our next meeting, over who we think, or, how we should market to get someone qualified to join. It might take us a little while before we find the right person. I can't just blanketly nominate the town manager, director of operations at this point, just because we have been tasked with quite a bit. But we're on it, and I think we can say that we're glad to be a part of the work that you're doing, and we look forward to participating.
Well, we're glad to have you guys too, and I appreciate the time tonight, and hopefully here in the next few months we'll really make some progress and have some great news for Northwest.
Well, thank you, Sean and Sean. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
You too. So we're fixing stormwater issues. We're working on our broadband network. Wow. And it's only 8:06.
So are we gonna, well, I guess I'll bring
What's
it up during budget time. Well, because it says like storage and place for communications, so do we gotta start budgeting for that at some
I
point?
think we'd have
or-
to agree to a very specific thing.
first before we
Right, before we
entertain that.
do- and it's, and it
know,
says if we ever wanted to leave, we leave the
we
same
could
way
leave
we
it any
joined.
time, okay.
So,
I just
Yeah,
throwing it out
those are-
there.
there's a
The
huge
key
level of
points, low risk.
very, very low, and we can leave, as quickly as we can warn a special meeting if we wanted to. Um,
And they're getting some really important grants.
Well, that, and, yeah, I mean, ARPA
Sizable
and
grants.
ARPA had a lot of money available for broadband. I know the state has quite a bit. It's a bipartisan thing at the moment. You remember 15 years ago during the Douglas administration, there were talks of how much would get put in the capital bill for broadband.
So that fiber network can use different carriers like Verizon or whoever, like the way I understood it.
Sounds like you should join the district to find out, because I can't answer that.
Well, I know, but it just seems like
We might have our guy right here, at least our alternate.
That's what I understood, that they were gonna build
Like
a
different
highway
carriers.
that under-
Yeah.
just about anybody can
Creates
use.
competition, lowers rates. You would think. And there's probably a meeting somewhere in some warm climate where the prices are decided ahead of time.
I know, I love my bill.
Yeah, you gotta talk to the loyalty department once a quarter to keep it from going over $500.
The choices are not all that varied. So the order, a little different than the red pen, but the next one is just, you were copied on 3 different applications for Act 250. A motion is requested, informational. The last one, though, that we added was having to do with the bylaw modernization. Northwest Regional Planning has asked that we coordinate that grant. The match are minimal, other than, obviously, I think that we have the bandwidth to help oversee that plan, but it shows you the budget and scope of work, which I thought was, it's always good to see, like, actually, what are we gonna do with this grant? And working with these communities, I think, we can start to address the housing and development needs. Just to, sorry, oversimplify that a great deal, but,
Reducing barriers, homes for all, reducing barriers.
yeah, and with a number of communities, I feel like this is a consortium that could actually make a difference in our area with regional planning, helping us do that. They're gonna help us do that. We should tie it back to those that are not always listening to our meetings, but back with our bylaws. So they're gonna help us modernize our bylaws to set policy that encourages the elimination of some of these barriers. That's what we're trying to do.
So it's your recommendation that we join in on this and authorize this resolution, or approve the resolution?
And I'm seeing, Carrie, the price is gonna be, the cost, I should say, is between $662 and $756.
Right, it's minimal,
Right.
but the product is great.
And it
There's some
says
good stuff in here.
if we adopt the language, then the match requirements waive.
Right,
Right.
right.
So that's what we say, that's what we'd pay if we got it, because we don't wanna adopt all of it. just
Correct.
some. So it's really, again, it's kinda like the last
It's low
discussion,
risk.
it's a low risk. High reward, low risk, okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the FY 22 municipal resolution for bylaw modernization on behalf of the town of St. Albans?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll sign it right now. Done. I just need KC2 signature, and we're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, reducing barriers and,
Do not have anything else under town manager.
okay, so schedule, we have our next regular meetings on November 15th, not 18th, like I kept saying. And then Monday, December 6th, both at 6:30. We've got another budget meeting coming up Monday, November 8th, next Monday at 5:30 PM. Okay, so we probably will need another budget meeting or two
Yes, we
before
will.
we wrap, but we can talk about when we want to schedule that next week. We're probably, if it worked for everybody, I would probably be looking at maybe the 22nd or 29th. It might be nice to take a week off on the 22nd and come back to it on the 29th, and then have our regular meeting on the 6th. But I guess let's all check our calendars before next Monday for the 22nd and 29th of this month and see which one works best. That sounds okay?
Yes.
Okay. My report, looking forward to welcoming Canadian visitors back to our humble little corner of the United States. We look forward to having them be tourists and contributing to our local option tax revenues again. And we're watching not that there's really anything that we can do about it, but we're watching the testing requirements for Canadian visitors. But that's a development coming, and they're an important part of our local economy. Other than that, I'm probably going to, given that it's 8:12, move on. I will say that as part of the BEI committee discussion, I'm reaching out to a lot of other community nonprofits. Jessica and I have had some discussions over, what we have available to us for options to address the concerns that, the proposed committee would be charged with addressing, at least coming up with recommendations for us to really address. So I've spoken with Maple Run, their leadership, and they're dealing, we're not alone in considering what the best option is to accomplishing this work. So I would highly recommend that we all, maybe within our own organizations, if you have an employer that's doing this work, or of someone who's gone through it with their employer, ask what the vehicle was and how it worked and what they'd recommend to be different. And we're going to have that discussion in greater detail on the 15th. I'm finding personally now that a lot of organizations are hiring consultants that specialize in the exact work that we're talking about accomplishing. And Jessica and I had a discussion about a specific consultant that we both think would be fantastic for this workload. We would define the scope in that case within an RFP most likely, because the cost would probably exceed $5,000 and need to go to bid for our purchasing policy. And it's just, but let's do our due diligence on it and come prepared to the 15th to have a more in-depth discussion. But I think I'd definitely be in support of a consultant. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the RFP, the timing, and how to pay for it. So that's my only other comment under my report. So now we'll move on to agenda item 8, other business. Does anybody have any other business before we move into executive session? Okay, would somebody like to make the tongue twister of a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues where premature general public knowledge of the subject matter would place the town or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Further move to make a motion to enter an executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of Vermont statutes, and to invite the town manager.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night,
Recording
Alan.
stopped.
Have a good night, Jen. See you later.
Good night, thank you.
Anna, have a good night.
Bye, you too, thanks.